Today is a very special Lunch with a Hero at the American Legion Post 639. I'm with Tony Piche, who I met through a mutual friend, who for the first time ever served, but didn't serve for the United States, but actually served for South Africa.
That's right.
So whenever when our mutual friend reached out to me and said, hey, I'm friends with this guy, but I think it'd be interesting, I was like, oh, heck yeah, that'd be a great conversation to have. Because for me, I love this because it gives me a lot of perspective about people's experiences in the military and out, but also this would give me a good perspective about service in another country. So how did that work? Did you sign up? Did you get drafted?
Okay, so in the 70s, I was living in the UK. That's how it started. So when you turn 16, you have to register.
Okay.
And they followed me, and I had to register in the UK. And they called me up for national service, which then was 12 months. So you were mandated to go and serve for 12 months. I ended up serving for 24 months.
Okay.
We were, at that time, transitioning from a low-intensity war on 3 fronts to a formal war on 1 front and informal on 2 fronts, as well as offering support for Rhodesia. And I was on the Mozambique side. When I finished all my basics in that's where I was on the Mozambique side.
Okay.
So, I didn't go to the main Angola conflict area.
Okay. But so first of all, you were only supposed to do 12. Why'd you stay in for another year?
Good question. So what happened was, I was. Okay, so can I back up a bit?
Yeah, of course.
So when I got called up, I was pissed because I was
16, and you're like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" I mean, it's the same thing here in the States. You're 18 to register. You have to go through the same thing.
Outside of London, naive South African, learning the world in the fast lane, and they offered me a Flossie flight back, which is a military aircraft back to South Africa to go do my national service. And I received, you don't dictate where you go to, it gets dictated for you. Mm-hmm. I was called up to 1 SSB, a Special Services Battalion. Knew nothing about it, got there, everybody's equal, you just grunt for 9 weeks, and did that. Then they started to do pre-selection for support scouts, which is forward operating guys that would call in armor, and so you basically do field craft and all that sort of stuff. This is in 75. I was bumped out of that because I was English speaking. South Africans at that time were very different. Afrikaans ruled the thing, English, and then blacks were not allowed in the military officially.
Okay.
But I served with a lot of blacks, but that's another story. So I was bumped out of that, went to Pretoria, did to the military police, and then because of my fieldcraft training, I was in second phase training, and they put me on the border in Mozambique and Zululand as a forward operating person. So I was good at what I did, and I had 2 radios, and they used to come and fetch me either at certain waypoints and take me down to base and debrief. They flew my mother down from Johannesburg to Durban and said, listen, this guy, even though he's English, he's good at what he does. We want him to sign up for some more. She said, well, I couldn't handle him since he was 12.
That's why he was in London, or outside of London when he was 16.
So my dad died when I was 8. So she said, if that's what he wants, go. So I said, okay, well, how much money was it? And they said, we'll give you another $3,000, which was for me a lot of money.
I mean, that's a lot of money for me now.
And I could stay where it was, and
no change.
And I did the whole north section of Zululand, Swaziland, and southern Mozambique.
So what's a typical day in that job?
It depends. It depends on what was going on or where we were. I had 3 people ahead of me that I answered to. One was the OC of the field base at the time. The one was my direct superior, which was down in Natal Command in Durban. And the third guy that I worked the most with was a major from Silver Mine in Cape Town, which is about 1,200 miles away. He was head of intelligence for the East Indian Ocean region. And we did a lot of support for people that were doing submarine observations, radar observations. And the Russians were in the southern Mozambique area, and they were hiding amongst the re-education camps. Are you familiar with that conflict at all?
Not so much, but it's like as you get deeper into it, I'm starting to track where this is going. I mean, this is Cold War start. This is kind of a different front of a Cold War.
So I did support for 2 recce selections, where the recce's from the Bluff would come up and do selection courses. It was a 6-week course, and I had jumped previously, and so we had Bushman trackers which came in and helped tracking to see who was cheating in the selection course, and I was behind the Bushman trackers and so I did 2 of those. That's why I asked what is a day to day. They were dry base camps which we also offered support. Me and another guy offered support for. So we had a big commando civil defense system going. So if you were outside of national service, you still had to do 3 months every 3rd year or 1 month every year of national service, where they would come and train you before they'd send you to the border.
Kind of like National Guard here.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we would do all the support for those guys, and to see that they'd stay in line with the locals. If there was an quasi operation on, we would just see that there was no if they got out of hand, how to handle them. Okay. And then the main task that I had with Major Milan from Silvermine was forward support. So we would check up on what the people were doing at Ponta de Ora or Katwan, the training camps. And then I would do some tracking and anti-tracking for the terrorists coming through Swaziland into South Africa. So that's pretty much what I did for 14 months.
Man, wildlife. I mean, Africa, was it just unbelievable?
So no, there's game reserves.
Yeah. And especially in that area.
So if you know northern Zululand, so I serviced from Jasini was the base camp. From Jasini right up the Swaziland border to Nduma Game Reserve, right across the coast to Kosi Bay, and then down to Sodwana. That was a big area. That's
huge.
1,000 square miles.
Yeah.
But we had 4 radios, and they were hidden. We didn't have solar back then, so we had other people that would hide batteries for us, and we would swap the B-25s into the batteries.
That's cool.
Okay? And myself and the other guy, because we would swap as we were, whatever we were doing. Like the one time I was following this one guy called the White Russian, and what he was doing, and he was being guarded by Frelimo Mozambique soldiers, but they were abusing the local population and hard on some black trainees that were going to be sent south of the border into Southern Africa to cause trouble. And so I worked a lot with Major Milan in that area. That's pretty much what I did. It was a dry ration camp, and my support was radios, and he would fly in with a helicopter, and we'd meet at a location.
And you're in your late teens.
17 to 19, yeah.
Your late teens.
Yeah.
I just that's the whole thing. I'm sitting here talking with you, and obviously you're not a teenager anymore. But just to picture myself, 17, in Africa, in the middle of this conflict, I can't even. And then to be good enough to where they're like, "Hey, man, we got to figure out a way to keep this kid."
Right. So
why didn't you stay for a 3rd year?
So I'll tell you, Major Milan was the intelligence guy. Another major, he became a commandant just after I met him. Was my direct OC down at Intel Command. He flew my mum down and had the conversation, and she said, "Do it." And he just said, "Listen, he's heard high things of me about Eben de Vos, who was the OC at the Forward Operating Base, and I'm under his control. And if he gives me any trouble, my backstop is him." And they gave me a Land Rover and a Uzi submachine gun. I had my FN, and that was it. I had 2 roles. I had to report in every day to the OC at Jasini, and if he needed me to come in, I would come in, or just give him the coordinates, and they'd come pick me up in a Alouette. And I would spend probably a month at a time out there, and then I'd have to come back and refreshen up and drink up a bit and recover and
go back
out. Yeah.
Man, what an incredible story.
And I met some really good heroes there.
I bet you, and that's the thing. A lot of people don't realize that this world, since pretty much the beginning of our existence as a society, as civilization, we've always been in conflict. And it's not just this country that's in conflict. There are so many other conflicts that are happening all over the world, and sometimes they, are indirectly affecting this country, or directly affecting this country, or there are other wars being fought between this conflict, behind this conflict. It gets really chessy after a while. But I really wanted to. I'm so glad we got a chance to meet. I'm so glad we got to sit down and to share a little bit about your story. And thank you for your service.
You're welcome. Yeah.